Welcome back viewers, ladies, gentlemen, non-binaries and anyone with ears or other sound detection organs. Hope you enjoy. We are continuing with Going Native, written by Uncle Sealing. Going Native, Chapter 82. Stace sat awkwardly in the too large chair on the other side of Commander REM's desk. The man looked uncomfortable, scratching at the back of his neck. She had to empathize. This was hardly comfortable for her either. She broke the silence quickly, trying to get some momentum building. "So, what did you want to talk to me about?" This battered male was one of the Painter facility's guests, supposedly a part of the security staff, but they really didn't interact much. He left her girls alone and she left him alone. It was a good system. He took another moment to collect himself, then steeled his expression and finally asked a bizarre question. "Commander REM, how do you feel about your posting here at the Painter Research Institute?" "It's a job. I feel that my team has done exemplary work in keeping you all safe. And if the military gave her another posting, she'd be there instead. When she was posted here, the expectation was that the facility would be upgraded into a proper military base, and once everything was built up she might even be able to finally bring her husband to Earth. She hadn't seen him in almost a year. Instead, she was in the middle of nowhere with a bunch of weirdos. She was proud of the job she was doing, but REM really could be doing more. Do you think you would be up to an increase in scope on the project? Is that something you'd be comfortable handling?" "Why are you asking me this?" "Well, if the operations here were to..." "No, Stace. Why are you asking me this? If there are concerns, it shouldn't be going through you. You're a..." REM tried to think of a word that wouldn't be insulting. "A tenant?" That same nervous tick again, a hand coming up to rub at the man's neck. "You mean nobody told you?" "Man, this is awkward." "Told me? What?" At least he was kinda cute when he was all flustered. Nowhere near her husband, but worth taking the time to look at. "I bought a third of the Painter Research Institute." The silence dragged on while REM tried to process his words. He bought a third of a multimillion credit research facility. Just went out and got one, like shopping for groceries. While she stared, Stace cleared his throat and continued. "I thought someone would have let you know. We're expanding operations, and I purchased a third of the company to provide more operating funds for Sammy's experiments. That's why I was asking about your feelings. We're going to be throwing a lot of money around in the next couple of months, possibly opening up an entire second facility dedicated just to research. It's going to mean greatly expanding security." He took a moment to clear his throat again, collect his thoughts. "I am also going to need some staff for bodyguard work. I have a lot of errands to run while Sammy and crew are off testing the very cheap array, and, considering what seems to happen any time I step foot off the property, Ella has insisted that I have guards." Commander REM choked back a laugh, which seemed to break her from the brain lock that had temporarily struck her. Of course he would need guards. He was now one of the major VIPs. "What sort of expansion are you planning?" "Sammy's new experiments are going to need a decent amount of secure physical space, probably the size of a large aircraft hangar. We will need another space at least as big for storage, perhaps a third as necessary. Power will be an issue as well. Building out here in the mountains will be more expensive, so right now I'm leaning towards purchasing land in Durango and setting up a second facility there." "That's a terrible idea." REM picked up her tablet and pulled up a map. "My assumption is that with the increased research there will be more attention to the facility." Stace nodded. "In that case, we're better off expanding here. Even if it's more expensive or causes infrastructure headaches, all it takes is somebody to hit your cute little car with a railgun while you're traveling from Site 1 to Site 2 and everything is fucked. Stace flinched at the comment, and REM remembered that, despite everything, Stace was a male. Delicate. Sensitive. She gave him a moment to collect himself before she continued. You asked if I am comfortable handling this research facility expanding. I am more than comfortable with it. I am enthusiastically supportive of us doing this job properly. Right now I am overstaffed and underutilized. REM took a moment to carefully consider their options before pointing at the map. I suggest we build here. It's a little farther down slope and should be far enough away to only minimally affect the observatory operations. It also gives us good lines of sight for defense. Makes sense. I don't know too much about security, so I will defer to your judgment. Stace's face crooked up in a little smile, and REM wondered if she could push this a little more. He did say he would defer to her. We can build your lab here, with storage buildings here and here. Her prosthetic arm tapped loudly against the tablet, making the man flinch. He had gotten better about seeing her arm, but he was still uneasy. We should also add a barracks here and an administrative building here. 2 watchtower sensor platforms on the corners here and here. Fencing should be fine for security, with the rough terrain a wall would be unnecessary. Why a barracks? Will you need more staff? We may need more security personnel, but my main reason is so we can keep most of my Marines near where the action will be. If the research is happening at the new buildings, then that's where we are most likely to expect trouble. Plus if all the Marines were out of the hotel she'd be a lot more comfortable bringing her husband to live with her in the apartment. Stace nodded along to her words. Sounds good. Can you get me a proposal for what you think would be an ideal building layout for security? I will find an engineering firm that can work within your parameters and we will begin construction immediately. We'll also need space for a small power plant, probably a hydrogen fusion plant like you would see on a spacecraft. Sammy's new project is going to take a lot of power. That gave REM pause. What the hell were they doing here? Bottles clinked on the roof of the hotel. Jelsai Chelza and Ella Helium sat in folding chairs, watching the sun go down. Keller and Toral would be joining them later, a sort of girls' night to just sit and decompress after the shit show of the last couple days. I keep thinking about what that militia bitch said to us, out there in the rain. Ella took a drink from her bottle and sighed. Oh. Yeah. How Stace was no good and human males were dangerous. Goddess, I wanted to beat the shit out of her. Remembering it brought the rage back. She sat the bottle down on the roof before she accidentally crushed it. I wouldn't have stopped you. Jelsai smirked. Well, not for a few hits at least. But that's the thing. I used to think of humans the same way she does. Hell, I'd given variations of that same speech dozens of times. I believed it. And then she'd met Stace and the Sams. Even Jessica had drastically shifted her opinion of humans. People change. Circumstances change. Jelsai finished the rest of her bottle, then reached for another in the cooler between them. I bet it was even true, at least for you. What do you mean? You've been here the entire occupation, right? Dropped down on Liberation Day. Yeah. My first deployment. I bet in all that time, you were just going from firefight to firefight. Every time you interacted with a human was some life or death struggle. It's no wonder you'd feel that way. Ella nodded. There had been a few good ones, but they usually ended up getting killed for assisting the Shilvati efforts. Stace was the first human Ella had met that didn't have some sort of angle or agenda. He just wanted to help. As Ella finished her own bottle, Jelsai continued. That militia cunt probably had the same experience. Her only dealings with humans were as a law enforcement officer. After a while at that, everyone looks like a criminal. You start judging long before you meet them and, eventually, you stop thinking of the people you are supposed to be protecting as people at all. You're right. Almost makes me feel sorry for the stupid bitch. Elora grinned. Wouldn't stop me from kicking her tusks into the back of her throat if I saw her again, though. I'll hold her head for you, if we ever get the chance. Jelsai sighed. Honestly, Toril may have gone overboard. That militia officer now has at least a dozen noble houses after her, not counting Provincial Governess Wasiro and the Interior. At the very least she's looking at a couple decades of hard labor. If she lives that long. Honestly, I think the only way she'll make it to trial is if all the assassins try to enter her cell door at the same time and get stuck. Elora guffawed, nearly spilling her drink. Let's not tell Stace. He's sensitive about that sort of thing. Jelsai swung her bottle over, clanking it against Elora's. Deal. Ice rattled in the shaker as Stace made a show of his bartending skills, grinning lopsidedly at Alice. The pair were in the living room of the human's cozy apartment, the room finally clear of the boxes and cut flowers that had dominated the place on Alice's first visit. It was back to the cozy, understated style that he was quickly learning to enjoy on Earth. After the bustle of his last couple weeks, it was nice to settle down and get a break from his wives for a while. The seal on the shaker was broken with a quick smack from the heel of Stace's hand and he carefully poured 2 drinks out into matching long-stemmed glasses. The fluid was a pale yellow in color and there was just enough to fill both glasses perfectly. After visiting bars all over the planet, Alice was starting to realize what a treasure his son had managed to find out in the wilderness. The man could fight, he could sew, and he could make a hell of a. What's this one called? It's called the bee's knees, which is a dated slang term for something that is fantastic or wonderful. It's made with honey, which is made by bees, hence the name. Oh. Honey. Alice tried to hide his apprehension as he took the drink. He really did enjoy the flavor of honey, at least he did until he visited that winery that kept its own bees. Now he knew a bit too much about the process. Still, he wasn't going to be a prude. Stace nodded to himself after taking a sip of his own, clearly enjoying it. Alice decided to put on a brave face and give the drink a try. The buzz of the citrus and gin on his tongue was offset beautifully by the sweetness of the honey syrup. It was like that lemon drop Stace had made him that first visit, only somehow more elegant. Fuck where it came from, Alice would live off of this if he could. When he sat the glass back down, more than half of it was gone. Be careful there, it's more booze than not. Who cares? It's good and I don't have to drive anywhere. Alice grinned and the human barked out a small laugh. Fair enough. Stace took a moment to collect his thoughts. It was clear there was something on the man's mind, but he wasn't ready to bring it up yet. Alice didn't mind waiting. How was your trip? Oh, it was wonderful. Definitely worth coming out to Earth. Rio is a paradise, once things calm down here a bit I wouldn't mind getting a vacation home there. The human's shaggy hair waved in the air as he shook his head. I still can't quite wrap my head around taking a vacation on another planet. I suppose most people don't get a chance. Our family has been incredibly fortunate, which affords us some luxuries. Plum-colored lips curled in a smile before Alice continued. I would say between Iing and Jelsai Chelsea you've really managed to do well by yourself. I'm sure you'll have lots of travel in your future. He threw a wink at the end to take any sting out of the comment. Instead of laughing, Stace went quiet, looking down in his lap. It took a few long, drawn-out moments before he spoke. I grew up poor, but my late husband was quite wealthy. A lot of people assumed that's why I was with him. Just looking for a gold-plated dick. When his head raised up, there were tears in Stace's mismatched eyes. I hope you don't think so little of me. Goddess, Stace, of course not. Alice, you idiot, damage control time. I was making a joke. I didn't mean to strike a nerve. You have more than proven otherwise. Even if he was just a credit chaser, which he wasn't, it would be a small price to pay for keeping Ian alive and protecting Alice and Rena in that bar. Good. Stace's glass trembled as it raised to his lips, and when it returned to the table it was empty. A quiet sigh followed before he spoke again. Alice, I have a favor to ask of you. It's probably going to take up a lot of your time, but I need the help and I don't have any connections of my own. It's also something that has to be handled discreetly. Okay, you've got me intrigued. With the Shilvati Empire constantly expanding, there have to be marginally habitable worlds that get colonized. Some sort of getting started in the wilderness technology package should be available, right? Alice nodded. Of course there were such things, in a sense. Places got colonized that didn't have any infrastructure, so on the frontier you just brought your own. Thinking about upgrading your cabin? That earned the Shilvati a genuine smile. Something like that, on a very large scale. I figure there has to be a lot of that stuff on the secondary market. Industrial fabricators that are rugged but maybe less efficient than normal models, solar cells and wind turbines and other sorts of power generation that can get people by until reactors can be built, that sort of thing. Golden irises floating in a pool of black flashed in the light as Alice tilted his head. What is this about, exactly? Are you planning to start a new home for humanity? After what we did with this one? Nah, we've got to clean up our act a little first. The levity left the human's face in a rush, his posture drooping. This is for well, I can't go into details, but imagine a world caught in a sudden ice age. Possibly a near-total die-off of plant and animal species. If such a thing were to happen and the people here at the Painter Research Institute learned about it, we would want to fix it. Sammy and Samuel would find some way to fix the climate, but that takes time. Anybody left alive there is, rather, they would need help to keep their civilization up and running while the climate gets sorted. Ha! How delightfully noble! Alice could feel his brow furrowing, his mouth curling into an involuntary smirk as he considered it. How far along would this hypothetical civilization have gotten before the ice? Early industrial, some limited contact with higher technology. And how many are in the cold? Hypothetically. We don't know yet. I would estimate. Well, with some rough back of the napkin math I would say somewhere between 150,000 people and 0. Stace was starting to look agitated, his eyes wet again. I really hope it's not 0. That knocked the reaction mass out of Alice's engine. Realizing how much was at stake for the hypothetical people, for an entire civilization. And the fact that Stace couldn't give out details. We did it, didn't we? The Shilvati Empire. Stace didn't reply, but he didn't have to. The thought was sickening, but it wasn't shocking. Not being shocked was disturbing in its own ways. How many atrocities did it take to get inured to them? The only way we can help them is if nobody knows we're helping. If anybody finds out, that's the end of it and possibly the start of a galaxy-wide war. Stace grabbed the bottle of gin from the table and poured some straight into his glass. Alice grabbed his own glass and threw back the last of his drink, then held the glass out so the human could slop some gin into it. While he took a pull of the sharp alcohol, Alice considered. We really should get Rena and my other wives in on this. They make the money, I just spend it. Alice picked up his pad and sent a quick message on the family group chat. I'm sure we can find you some affordable pieces of tech, And they'll understand that I can't explain why you need it. We're also going to need this stuff. Stace took out his own pad and, with a finger flick, sent a document over to Alice. It's all for Sammy's research. None of us have an idea what the going rate for any of this would be. The human took a moment to give Alice a serious look. I don't want your family to lose money. Charge us what you think is fair, don't short yourselves on our account. Once Sammy's initial research is done, I have a feeling that money won't be a big concern, but for now our budget is finite but still large. Alice considered the list. First his eyebrows rose, then his mouth went slack. Among the list were a hydrogen fusion generator that could power a small town, an artificial gravity generator capable of covering a large building, and 20 to 30 small skimmer-sized artificial gravity units, preferably all from the same manufacturing lot to ensure they are as similar as possible. Further miscellanea only brought up more questions. What in the name of the Empress are you crazy bitches doing here? Stace shrugged. I honestly have no idea. Sammy told me they'd try to come up with a good way to explain it if it works. End of chapter. If you enjoyed, like, subscribe, click the bell so you don't miss any episode and do all the other YouTube stuff, visit and support the author, and I'll see you next time. If you didn't enjoy, comment on what I can do better. And as usual, have a wonderful day.